A 6.1 magnitude earthquake has rocked northeastern Iran. State media report the epicenter of the April 5th quake was in the Sifid Sang district, about 80 kilometers southeast of the city of Mashhad. The quake took place at a relatively shallow depth of 10 kilometers, making it even more destructive. Sifid Sang district is home to around 5,000 people, according to the Associated Press. An emergency services official told Al Bawaba News that up to 70% of buildings in 4 villages have been destroyed. Photos and videos of cracked roads and houses turned to rubble in the affected areas have been posted online. Press TV reports at least 2 people have died and dozens are injured as a result of the quake. At least 20 aftershocks have been recorded, dealing additional damage. Meanwhile, rescue teams continue to carry out operations in the affected areas. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
Roadblocks all over Buenos Aires. This is what the first national strike against the government of Mauricio Macri looked like on Thursday. Strike leader Oscar Cooperman says the government is ignoring the situation among Argentina's poorest.
Our soup kitchens are getting more crowded with people asking for food and work. The situation at the slums is even more difficult as there is no work in sight. We are here because it is our obligation to demand this government change its economic plan.
The strike was called by Argentina's most powerful union, the General Confederation of Labor, which is challenging Mauricio Macri's economic policies. Since taking office, Macri devaluated the currency and ended subsidies for some basic services. This led to lower salaries in real terms and lost jobs.
This strike is happening in the middle of tough salary negotiations. Macri's economic measures have generated around a 40% inflation in 2016. People here say that salaries need to be adjusted because inflation is hurting the poor and the working class.
The 24-hour strike started at midnight, bringing to a halt public transport, airports, customs, schools, factories, and some government offices in South America's second-largest economy. But not everyone supported the measure. Martín Schulzer, like many others, decided to open his shop.
It is the only way to contribute to be here. We have always worked during a strike. I own this business, and if we are not here, it's very difficult to get by.
Authorities in Stockholm are calling a deadly rampage a terrorist attack. According to Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, Sweden is the latest victim of a terror attack after a hijacker drove a beer truck into a department store. At least 3 people were killed and others have been injured. After the incident, the city was locked down by security with armed guards stationed throughout the downtown area. The metro system has also been closed and the central train station was evacuated. According to local reports, the driver is still at large.
On April 19th, asteroid 2014 JO25 will slip past Earth. According to NASA, it's scheduled to pass at a safe distance. The asteroid is about 2,000 feet in size and is twice as reflective as the Moon. Asteroids zip past Earth all the time. 2014 JO25 is noteworthy, however, for the combination of its size and the nearness of its trajectory to our planet. It will come within around 1.1 million miles, which is plenty safe. Earlier this week, another asteroid called 2017 GM passed Earth at a distance of a mere 10,000 miles. It was about the size of a car.
The area near the Titanic's resting site is unusually overcrowded by icebergs. North Atlantic shipping lanes are filled with about 450 icebergs, crowding the passageways where cargoes usually cut straight through. The US Coast Guard's International Ice Patrol cited only 37 icebergs in the area last week. Since 1914, inspired by the loss of the Titanic, the International Ice Patrol has been tasked with warning shipping of possible icebergs in the North Atlantic. Taking the advice of the Ice Patrol, transatlantic vessels are taking detours and slowing down, adding around 400 miles to their trip, about an extra day and a half of travelling. According to the Associated Press, Gabrielle McGrath, who leads the Ice Patrol, admitted she has never seen such a drastic increase in such a short period of time. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
Osaka has become the first Japanese city to recognize a same-sex couple as foster parents. Japan's Health, Labor and Welfare Ministry said April 5th there is, quote, no precedent for same-sex couples fostering children. The couple are two men in their 30s and 40s who have been caring for a teenage boy since February. The older man told Kyodo News, quote, I am happy we became foster parents as a single household, not just individuals. Members of the LGBTQ community have been allowed to foster children in Japan, but typically only as individuals, not as a couple. There is no law against same-sex couples becoming foster parents, but the Japan Times says many LGBT applicants are turned away at the door. The head of Rainbow Foster Care told the Japan Times, quote, it is very small-minded to think that only couples of men and women can realize an ideal family. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Mila Uni.
Alabama Governor Robert Bentley won a court fight Friday to halt his looming impeachment hearings, but couldn't prevent the release of an investigative report that describes his paranoia and obsession over trying to keep his romance with a staffer from becoming public. The stunning events capped a wild week in Alabama politics. Lawyers from the governor rushed to court and appeared before two judges to stop the impeachment proceedings, which were set to begin Monday. Shortly before the lawyers argued, Bentley defiantly stood on the steps of the state capitol and refused growing calls from fellow Republicans that he step down.
A federal judge on Friday approved an agreement negotiated under the Obama administration to overhaul the troubled Baltimore police force, sweeping aside objections from the Trump Justice Department. Jeff Sessions promptly warned that the agreement may result in a less safe city. U.S. District Judge James Bretter signed the so-called consent decree one day after a hearing to solicit comments from Baltimore residents, calling the plan comprehensive, detailed, and precise. He denied a request to delay the signing to give the Trump administration more time to review the agreement.
Brazil's top court has banned police from striking. The Supreme Court ruled 7-3 that federal and civil police are banned from going on strike. The April 5th decision included several other public positions, including firefighters, according to the Rio Times. Police strikes aren't unusual in Brazil, but the state of Espírito Santo suffered in February when murder rates went up and more than 100 people died during a massive police strike. Espírito Santo was hit hard during Brazil's recession. Police officers and other public employees were subject to prolonged pay freezes, and some public services were suspended. Police went on strike to protest the pay freezes. In its decision, the court said police and other individuals whose work relates to public security aren't allowed to strike because their jobs are essential to maintain public order. The court compared a state where police can strike to a state of anarchy. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Karen Caldwell.
On Thursday evening, President Donald Trump authorized the release of 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles into an airbase in retaliation against the recent chemical attack led by Bashar al-Assad's administration on his own citizens. Many Americans are losing their minds over the possibility the U.S. may enter another war, and this is not a time to celebrate. Despite that, Brian Williams appears to see some beauty in the situation. The MSNBC anchor continued to refer to the missiles as beautiful. He even went so far as to quote Leonard Cohen's "First We Take Manhattan." Williams said, "I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons."
On Friday, China's state newspaper, The Global Time, published an editorial critiquing President Donald Trump's decision to launch airstrikes on Syria. The newspaper said that Trump's choice was made in haste. They continued to infer that the former real estate tycoon is using it to prove to the world that there is no businessman president. The Times said that he wants to prove to the world that he is no businessman president and that he will use U.S. military force without hesitation when he considers it necessary.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte ordered the country's military April 6th to strengthen its presence on islands in the South China Sea that the Philippines claim as its sovereign territory. Duterte said, quote, "We have to maintain our jurisdiction over the South China Sea." The president went on to say that he plans to visit the island of Thitu to raise the Philippine flag there during the country's Independence Day on June 12th. The order came just prior to a meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump. Last month, Duterte said the Philippines couldn't stop China from building on the disputed Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. Thitu is part of the Spratly Archipelago and is close to Subi Reef, an artificial island built by China. Territory on the island chain is widely contested by several different countries. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
UPI.com reports that federal health officials from the Center for Disease Control reported Thursday that nearly half of American men and women under 60 are infected with the human papillomavirus, or HPV, putting them at risk for certain cancers. The HPV vaccine has the potential to reverse the epidemic and prevents thousands of cancers in the United States each year, the CDC researchers said. In teenage girls, HPV infection has dropped 60%, and in young women, it has dropped 34%.
Tax day is quickly approaching, folks, which means if you haven't already made your annual appointment to crunch numbers late into the night with TurboTax, now's the time. April 18th will be here sooner than you realize. According to a recent survey conducted by Real Self, an online forum for cosmetic treatment information and reviews, 36% of Americans reported that when tax day comes, they plan to cash in their refund on cosmetic enhancements, a percentage that has nearly tripled within the last year, as only 13% of participants reported allotting refunds to treatments. According to Real Self, participants plan to schedule appointments for Botox, injectable fillers such as lip augmentation, and cool sculpting, a non-invasive weight loss treatment.
Russia has banned a popular Photoshop image of President Vladimir Putin that implies he's a gay clown. Russia's Justice Ministry added the image to its list of banned extremist materials on March 30th. Russian officials haven't released the image, but based on the Justice Ministry's description, the Moscow Times thinks it's this one. It shows Putin's face in front of a rainbow wearing thick makeup with the words "Stop Homophobia" written on his forehead. The image's description on the list said that it implied the, quote, supposed non-standard sexual orientation of the president of the Russian Federation. The image became popular in 2013 after Russia banned public discussions about homosexuality anywhere where children might hear it. CNN reports people who share the image can get 15 days in prison or a 3,000 ruble fine, which is slightly more than $50 US. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Mila Uni.
Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said Friday that Moscow would strengthen and raise the effectiveness of the Syrian armed forces' systems of anti-aircraft defense following the American missile strike on Syria. The Defense Ministry also claimed the American strike was largely ineffective, saying that only 23 of 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched by the U.S. Navy struck their targets. The combat effectiveness of the U.S. massive missile attack on the Syrian airbase is extremely low, Russia's Defense Ministry said.
On Friday, Russia said it was cutting a hotline intended to prevent mid-air incidents over Syria. The decision was made in response to the U.S. missile attack on a Syrian base. The response demonstrates Moscow's readiness to defy Washington. It could even put the two nuclear superpowers on a course toward military confrontation. Rather than accept the humiliation of standing by while his ally is bombed, Russia President Vladimir Putin signaled he was ready to risk a clash with the U.S. and abandon hopes for mending ties under President Donald Trump. Russia's decision to suspend the hotline established after the launch of the Russian air campaign in Syria in September 2015 effectively means that Russian and U.S. planes could fly dangerously close to each other during combat missions. The move raises the risk of inadvertent or deliberate clashes in the crowded skies over Syria.
The role the Russians may have played in the suspected chemical attack that wiped out some 100 civilians remained unclear as of Friday. Two senior military officials who briefed reporters after the U.S. launched missiles on an airfield in Syria said they think they know who supported the gas attack. However, the officials stopped short of blaming Moscow. The U.S. has already laid responsibility for the chemical attack on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces. Russia, who supports Assad, called the U.S.'s response attack an act of aggression. A Russian Black Sea Fleet's frigate, the Admiral Grigorovich, is to enter the Mediterranean later on Friday. The ship will make a stop at the logistics base in Syria's port of Tartus. The 4,000-ton Admiral Grigorovich is one of Russia's most advanced frigates and is armed with cruise missiles. It participated in Russian missile strikes on rebel forces in Aleppo last November. The Russian vessel will be in the vicinity of two U.S. Navy destroyers that launched Syrian airstrikes last night.
Taiwan announced that it will build 8 new submarines to counter what it sees as escalating military threat from China. Senior Taiwanese Navy officials confirmed the plan on April 5th, just one day before Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump are scheduled to meet in Florida. China, who views Taiwan as a rogue province, has exercised its political clout to discourage other countries from selling submarines to Taiwan. The new submarines will be Taiwanese-made, unlike its current fleet of 4, which were bought from overseas decades ago. The current fleet consists of 2 World War II-era vessels used for training and 2 Dutch subs acquired in the 1980s. The initial design for the new subs is scheduled to be completed next year. Taiwan's defense officials said that the first submarine is expected to go into operation within 10 years. For Newsbeat Social from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
Reuters reports that Texas health officials are expanding testing recommendations for pregnant women in South Texas as the advent of warm weather increases the risk for local transmission of the mosquito-borne virus that has been shown to cause severe birth defects. The Texas Department of State Health Services on Friday recommended testing of all pregnant residents of Cameron, Hidalgo, Starr, Webb, Willacy, and Zapata counties in both the first and second trimesters of pregnancy. It is also urging testing for any resident who has a rash plus at least one other common Zika symptom: fever, joint pain, or eye redness.
Swedish police are in the midst of a manhunt following a deadly incident in the country's capital. According to local reports, the suspect rammed a truck into a department store in Stockholm's busy Drottninggatan shopping district. At least 4 people have died and 15 others have been injured, although Swedish National Police quickly arrested 1 person in connection to the rampage. Another suspect remains at large. Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven indicated that the incident is a terrorist act. It is also the latest in a string of vehicular terrorist attacks in Europe, with others occurring in France and Germany.
Clutching carnations and office smart, thousands came to Manizhnaya Square in central Moscow. Many were state employees and seemed reluctant to tell us why they were here. Rumors abound, managers had made attendance mandatory. But a unified message came from those who talk.
We are showing our solidarity with the people of St. Petersburg. We are mourning with them after such a horrible tragedy.
We are showing our solidarity so that such things don't happen again.
Of course, to hold a rally right outside the walls of the Kremlin, well, that sort of approval comes from the top. Russia's authorities are trying to unite the country with a message of anti-terrorism at a time when domestic discontent does seem to be growing. It's only a couple of weeks, after all, since tens of thousands of Russians took to streets across the country to protest against government corruption. In St. Petersburg on Thursday, police deactivated an explosive device found in a residential building, and 8 people have been detained, suspected of being the Metro bombers' accomplices. And several days of shooting in the southern city of Astrakhan has left 2 National Guardsmen and 4 gunmen dead, with some of the latest attackers coming from Central Asia rather than Chechnya. This analyst says Russia faces a new security challenge.
2 South Koreans are suing the governments of Seoul and Beijing over air pollution. The Yonhap news agency reports an environmental activist and his lawyer filed the lawsuit April 5th with the Seoul Central District Court. They're asking for 3 million won, or about $2,600 each, for physical and mental damage caused by smog blown in from China. The plaintiffs said, quote, China has the obligation to control pollutants at an acceptable level. According to China's Environment Ministry, PM 2.5 levels in the first 3 months of this year were up by 12% compared to 2016. PM 2.5 are the fine particles in smog deemed especially dangerous to health. South Korea is also responsible for its air quality woes, with the country's increased reliance on coal plants and diesel fuel. The plaintiffs said they brought the case to prompt both countries to find and deal with root causes of pollution. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.